everybody, and welcome to the next video in my collection of videos on creating great places to work. Today I'm joined by Gert and Nzimiro, who's the founder of Manwood James. I'm very grateful for you to be joining us today, Gert. Hi.
Hello, good afternoon.
Thank you. And I should be grateful if you'd start off by just telling our viewers a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure, absolutely. As Charlotte said, I'm Gert Nzimiro, and I am a founder of a recruitment business called Manwood James. I have spent the last 25 years plus in the recruitment industry. Most of the time been spent working for a large corporate business. And circa 3 years ago, I decided to take the plunge and set up my own recruitment business with some colleagues, stroke friends. And we've been in operation now just under 3 years. So we've become somewhat, I guess, recruitment entrepreneurs. It's been absolutely amazing to be able to kind of set up a business and kind of take it into a direction that you want it to go into, rather than following, you know, a very formal kind of traditional recruitment structure. So by setting up our own business, we have been able to kind of take our business into the direction that we would really want it to go into. So Manwood James is circa be 3 years this summer.
That's fantastic. And you've obviously weathered a rather bumpy storm over the last year or so. I mean, that's really great to hear that you're thriving and doing well in these difficult times.
Yeah, it was really, I mean, yeah, it's been a really difficult year for so many businesses, as we know. And we really began to hit our stride pre-COVID. And then, of course, you know, last year with the interruption of business, you know, it caused us a fair amount of anxiety and a number of challenges. But we've kind of weathered the storm, really. I must admit as well, I must say, you know, I think the government did a lot of help for small businesses, and we took advantage of that, and it definitely helped us through that really challenging time.
That's fantastic to hear. And I know that you probably have had lots of conversations with your clients about this as well. And I know that you and I have had these discussions before about how important creating a great place to work is, and how that helps businesses to thrive and get the best out of people. And obviously you're in there right at the beginning, aren't you? Helping businesses find the right people for their business. So first of all, I'd like to ask you what you think makes a great place to work.
Yes, that's a good question. It's really difficult. I guess this can be looked at from two perspectives, I guess. One being a perspective as me as a recruiter, when I talk to clients about what they think makes a great place to work and the environments that they're trying to create. And then I guess the flip side to that is my own personal experience of having great place of working, you know, or what my own idea is of what a great place to work is. Now, being a very small business, a great place to work is anything that I can create myself. So I guess really I have to draw upon what my clients see as a great place to work, and what maybe from a candidate's perspective or potential employee's perspective, what encourages them into different operations and different organizations. I think one of the really important things is a leadership team that listens to their employees. I think that's really, really important, that there's a management structure, or the management actually listen to people that work within the organization, because they can be just as, you know, they can come up with ideas. Some of them may be that are really innovative and creative. So definitely a management leadership team that listens to their employees. I think that's really, really important. I would also suggest great place to work is where there's a really, really free exchange of ideas, and different ways of working, etc. I think that is really, really important. And what definitely has developed over the last year, I guess, and since in the post-COVID world that we operated is that whole idea of remote working. I think that's become extremely prevalent, and of course in many, many cases necessary. And companies that can now adapt to that concept going forward, once we come out of lockdown, I think will be the ones that will attract the best talent. I think people have realized, companies have recognized that you can get just as much done. Productivity doesn't necessarily have to suffer by allowing remote working. And of course, that comes to them trusting the people that work for them. And if that trust is there, I think that also definitely is a key perk of somewhere that is a great place to work, where people can potentially have that work-life balance, not having to necessarily commute every day into an office. Those are the type of things I think that going forward will be more popular, and those type of employers that encourage that, I think will put them in good stead for being, you know, the type of operation, the type of organization that people want to work for. Flexible working, I think that's something that's been a really kind of, that's on trend anyway. And yeah, I would say that as well, you know, allowing flexible working for people that have families and people that their personal lives are in a situation where they can't necessarily be accommodated in an office every day. So again, I think businesses that offer flexible working is really something that's important.
I agree with you, actually. I was speaking to a client earlier on today about this very same thing, and they were saying that they really need to make sure that they offer, you know, really good flexibility, because they're based outside of central London, and they're now worried that headhunters are going to come for their employees because they can work at home, and you know they're not constrained to the local geographic talent pool anymore. So there are some big businesses out there that are thinking, you know, we really need to make some changes to retain the staff that we've got. So that was quite an interesting conversation. And I think what you say as well about listening is such an underrated skill. And that's the kind of thing that does create great places to work, because it allows employees to feel empowered to raise their ideas, their concerns, or anything that will hopefully help the business. And it also builds that trust, which then goes hand in hand with that flexibility, because you have those good relationships. So I think that's, you know, the really, really good point made by you there. Thank you. I think that's really important and often overlooked.
I think those traditional hierarchical structures within an organization have been really broken down. I think a lot of organizations have much flatter structures now than what they did, you know, over the last maybe 10 or 15 years. I think, you know, that traditional kind of hierarchy within an organization is broken down quite significantly, even down to the physical setup of offices. They're a lot more open plan. They're not, you know, like, oh, the directors sit in one room and everybody else sits in another. I think the whole thing of open plan offices has really been quite conducive for that collaborative approach and that exchange of ideas. I think, yeah, that's become really important now.
And I think it will continue to be even more so. And when you are trying to find the right people for your clients, how do you go about finding the right people for the right role to make sure they, you know, are going to fit in well somewhere and you know, help the business to succeed?
Sure. Traditionally, most recruiters would have gone to the first place that you go to when you have an opportunity for a client would be advertising somewhere. So whether that be on a job board, whether that be through a website of the actual business. What definitely has grown over the last few years is the use of LinkedIn, which, as we know, is a social media platform, but it's very much one that's a more formal professional platform. And that probably now has become the #1 place to find new talent, because you get on there not just people that are actively seeking new opportunities, but importantly, you also can access those the talent that are passively looking, which means they may not be on the market officially, but if you give them a good opportunity, or you present them with a good opportunity, then that's the type of thing that they would potentially be interested in. So yeah, I think LinkedIn is probably the biggest change in terms of searching for talent. Of course, as I said, you've got the job boards, you've got websites, but yeah, personally, my professional and personal experience of using LinkedIn is the number one kind of resource talent.
Yeah, I've found that LinkedIn's actually a really good tool for many other things as well, actually, for general marketing, business development, building relationships, finding people that have shared interests. So I'm a big fan of LinkedIn, which is obviously one of the places I'm going to be sharing this video. So thank you.
Oh, it's interesting actually. So I know that there is a lot of what should I say? I think a lot of employers and agencies maybe are in a dilemma of other platforms, like say Instagram. I mean, Instagram is a very casual social site. Is it really needed can you really attract talent through that way and through Facebook, etc.? I'm not totally convinced that those channels really work. But I think it can't be denied that surely there's going to be the next best thing. Something new will come up that's more socially engaging than the current traditional forms. But at the moment, LinkedIn have really cornered the market in terms of a way in which which people engage professionally.
Thank you. And I know that you and I were having a discussion before we started our recording today, and we were talking about various studies that have been conducted recently, and a lot of these show that a large percentage of professionals consider the mental health and wellbeing strategies offered by employers to be really important when searching for a role. So some of these studies seem to be suggesting it's not just about the salary anymore. It's about that. It's about what else can be offered. You've already mentioned flexibility. Have you found that candidates are looking for anything extra these days that is a bit different to how things have been previously?
Yes and no. I think companies are always trying to come up with more creative ways of attracting talent. From my experience, there haven't really been that many innovations. I think definitely a remuneration package that is competitive, work-life balance incentives, like I mentioned earlier, remote working. The most creative idea that I've heard recently, I'm not sure if you've ever heard of it, Charlotte, is unlimited holidays. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes, I have. It's an interesting idea, isn't it?
So yeah, I mean, it's quite an interesting concept where companies have kind of developed a policy whereby as long as your work is done, you can actually have as much holiday as you want. So as we know, there's the traditional anything between 20 to 25 days, maybe 25, 30 days maximum. Whereas if companies are going to say to potential employees, oh, you just have as much holiday as you want. I think it's really creative. Be interested to see how it's managed. But again, I'm sure it has some caveats in terms of, well, you can only actually take a limited holiday as long as your work is done. But it's a good perk to have. A particular company that I've been talking about it, they're piloting it within their business. And it'll be interesting to see how they get on it. They've taken that idea from somewhere else, which again, it's really good to see that companies are exchanging ideas and just trying to come up with different ways of attracting and keeping their talent. And yeah, days, which is what I've been saying about this particular client. It's been like, wow, how does that work? And I said, well, as long as your work is done, as long as it's, everything's cool, yeah, you can take as much holiday as you need.
I'd be really interested to hear back from you with some feedback on that at some point in the future. I think my concern as an employment lawyer would be that there are some people that actually, they thrive on working and perhaps they won't take enough holiday because they've not got a quota to take. So I think we'd see two ends of the spectrum then. I'd be really, really interested to hear some feedback on how that's really worked in real life.
Definitely. And going back to what I was saying earlier on again about remote working, I really think that for so many industry sectors, it is the way forward. And of course, again, there is a caveat with this because one does have to think, what will that mean for our city centres and the local economies that thrive upon that commuter traffic coming in and out of the city. I can talk obviously from I live and I've been born and raised in London, and I do it does concern me about what will happen to London. I mean, let's face it, the city of London itself is an economy that's bigger than a lot of European countries. And what will really happen to London as a city if suddenly that commuter traffic is lost as companies become more flexible by allowing their employees to work remotely? Yeah, it's kind of, it's great from one perspective, but from another, one does have to think about, what will the long-term effects be of having city centres that do not have those commuters moving in and out, of the centre of it.
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely a concern. I'm very biased here, but I do believe London is one of the greatest cities in the world, and I'm sure they're going to innovate and, still thrive by doing something completely different after all of this. At least I hope so. Anyway, it broke my heart to see London so quiet, but hopefully, it will be okay, and there'll be a new way of living and working, and we will all just adapt to that, I hope.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us, Gert. I really, really appreciate it. You've given us lots and lots of food for thought, and I would really love to have some feedback from you at a later stage on that holiday issue, and perhaps we could do another video in the future. But before we sign off, I
just remembered one thing. Do you remember last summer, a lot of Caribbean islands were offering this work remotely, work from our island, tax-free? I remember I wrote an article about it on LinkedIn. I've never managed to follow up how popular that actually turned out to be. But yeah, again, I mean, that's taking remote working to its extreme, right?
Actually, I attended a webinar a few weeks back, and the person giving it was actually based in Sydney, and he had a view that we were now essentially a world workforce, and you can hire the best talent from anywhere in the world because of technology and because of remote working. I think that's ambitious, but I don't think that's too far away, if I'm honest. Some companies are already offering a work from anywhere package. However, I'm not sure in practice how that works. I'm not a tax expert, but I imagine there's going to be all sorts of taxation.
Absolutely, and I've just remembered actually a case that we've had. So my business partner had a client that was based in London, but specifically was looking for talent in South Africa to work remotely for them. And at some point when he successfully managed to find talent, it then became a bit sticky from a legal perspective. The fact that it was a UK company, but employing people that actually work in South Africa. So yeah, they're definitely, I can see that there can be some legal issues with that, but it's already happening. I mean, that's a prime example where, a London-based business has employees in South Africa working for them.
It's going to be really interesting to see how this all pans out.
Definitely.
Thank you. And like I say, I really, really appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us. But before we sign off, as most of my viewers know, I'm a complete geek and I love reading and I love learning from other people. So my final question to you is, what is the best book you've read in the last year or so?
Oh my God, you've got me there. Well, I'm going to have to confess that my attention span for reading over the last few years is virtually zero. So I can tell you the last book that I read, or the one that I found interesting. It was about maybe 4 years ago. I read an autobiography. It was Alex Ferguson. So I'm quite a football buff. And yeah, I was just really interested in his journey from being a manager of a small provincial Scottish team, or Aberdeen, wasn't really a small team, but comparison to where he took that team in competing against Glasgow Rangers and Glasgow Celtic, and then his journey through to Man United and everything that he's achieved there. It was a really, really good read. I think there was some really good life and business lessons from it. So yeah, that was about 4 years ago, I think I read that.
there are a lot of sporting books that actually give very good lessons that can be applied in business as well, aren't there? So
Definitely, definitely.
I'm not a big football fan myself, but I will take a look at it,
Have
and,
a-
have a flick through and see if I can gain any useful insight from those.
Absolutely.
I'm sure lots of our viewers would actually be really interested in reading it anyway. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. And thanks again. I really appreciate it. And thanks. Bye-bye.
No, thank you. Bye.